Okay, so we always hear about the big names in space, right? Like those iconic missions, certain countries always hogging the spotlight. But what if I told you there's this space program out there making crazy progress, achieving things no one else has, and often without all the hype?
Yeah, that's what we're going to unpack today. It's
Wow.
kind of wild how much they're doing under the radar.
It really is. And we've got a ton of fascinating sources here, even a report in another language I can't even begin to pronounce.
Yeah, that one's a bit of a mystery.
But the mission here is to dig into the advancements of China's space program. Advancements that, honestly, are often super underestimated.
Underestimated is putting it lightly. What blows me away is just how fast China has become a major player in space. And we're not just talking about catching up. They're straight up innovating in some key areas, setting new standards, and a lot of folks aren't even aware of it.
Right. And that's what we're here for, to kind of shift those perceptions. So get ready, because we're going deep on their work on the moon, Mars, their own space station they built from scratch, their crazy array of satellites, and their plans for the future.
Whew. Ambitious doesn't even begin to describe it.
Ambitious is an understatement.
Totally. So best place to start is probably with the moon, right?
Yeah.
Everyone loves the moon.
For sure. And lunar exploration is like the perfect example of China's space strategy. Their whole change program shows just how methodical they are. Each mission builds on the last, getting more complex, pushing the boundaries further.
Yeah. And then there's chain 4. That was a huge moment.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was a game changer. We're talking about the first ever soft landing on the far side of the moon. And they didn't just land, they deployed a rover, U-22. But the real challenge there, think about it, the moon itself blocks direct communication with Earth from the far side. It's like radio silence.
Ah, right, because of the curvature. Exactly. So what do? They launched this relay satellite, Krekyo. It's like a bridge in space, enabling communication between the far side and Earth. Boom, problem solved. And to this day, China's the only country that's pulled that off, successfully operating on the far side of the moon.
That's nuts. It's not just about being there, it's about the tech needed to make it happen.
Exactly. This isn't some PR stunt. It proves they've mastered deep space communication, which is essential if you want to send people out there one day, or maybe even try to use resources on the far side.
Yeah, areas where everyone else is still playing catch up. So Chang'e 4 was huge. What about Chang'e 5?
Well, Chang'e 5 was another big win. Back in 2020, they managed to bring back lunar samples to Earth, China's very first lunar samples. Yeah. This was the combination of their 3-stage program. First, orbit the moon, then land, and finally bring back samples. They ticked all the boxes.
It's like the ultimate lunar to-do list.
Yeah, pretty much. But seriously, it shows they've got the skills to navigate, operate on another celestial body, and bring stuff back safely. That's a big deal.
Huge EE. And then they went and did it again, right? Change 6 in 2024, another far side first.
Yep, they sure did. Change 6 went and collected a hefty chunk of lunar samples, over 1,900 grams, all from the far side. Again, they're not just showing off, they're proving their robotic sample gathering tech is top-notch, and that they can do it on both sides of the moon. That kind of robotic precision in deep space is remarkable.
It's mind-blowing. Okay, from the moon, let's hop over to Mars. Another huge leap.
Literally a leap. So there's the Tianwen-1 mission. That was China's first solo trip to Mars. And just the fact that it worked, that says everything about their deep space ambitions. But what's really cool is that it wasn't just a simple orbiter. They sent a lander and a rover, Zhurong. And all 3 parts of that mission, they all made it to Mars.
Whoa, all at once. That's a bold move, sending an orbiter, a lander, and a rover all together.
It's not easy to land on Mars, right?
Right.
Like, notoriously difficult. It is definitely one of the toughest things to do in space. And China. They became the second nation ever to land a rover on Mars and get it working, all on their first try. That's huge. Zhurong touched down in May 2021, then went on a 2-kilometer road trip analyzing the Martian surface and atmosphere. The whole thing was a success. And it shows how quickly they're mastering interplanetary travel.
So they're busy exploring other planets, but they've also got their own little spot in space, right? Their space station, Tiangong.
Yeah, Tiangong. It's a big deal. Building and running that station is a cornerstone of their success. They wrapped it up in late 2022. And the coolest part, it's modular.
Modular.
Like Legos in space. You can add or remove sections as you need them. It makes the station super adaptable and means it can last longer.
That makes sense.
And this modular design, not a lot of countries have figured that out.
Huh.
It means they're seriously good at human spaceflight, life support systems, keeping astronauts healthy for long stretches, and orbital assembly. Think about it. Putting a giant structure together while you're whizzing around Earth. That's next-level engineering.
I wouldn't want to be the one holding the wrench.
Me neither. But it's more than just a cool building project, you know? Tiangong is a full-blown science lab up and running.
Oh, right. I always forget about the science part.
It's a big part of it. They're doing tons of research up there. Space life sciences, like how bodies adapt to being in space. Microgravity physics, which is basically studying stuff you can't really study on Earth because of, well, gravity. And of course, they're developing new space tech.
Okay, now that sounds cool. Like, what kind of research? Any examples? I bet there's some seriously cool stuff going on up there.
Oh, definitely. They've done some really cool things already. Like, they managed to grow rice in space from seed to a full plant. That has huge GE implications for, if we ever want to live on Mars or something.
Space risk.
Exactly. And then they also ran the longest experiment ever for a water ecosystem in space. That's a key part of figuring out how to live in space long term. You need closed-loop systems, so you don't have to keep shipping stuff up from Earth all the time. And these are just a couple examples. There's so much happening on Tiangong.
That's incredible. But they're not just focused on huge things like space stations, right? I mean, China's been launching a ton of satellites, too.
Yeah, their satellite game is super strong. They've got a huge and diverse fleet doing all sorts of things. And a big one to mention is BeiDou. That's their own global navigation system, up and running since 2020.
So basically like their own version of GPS.
You got it. BeiDou covers the whole planet for both military and civilian use. This is a big deal for them strategically. It means they don't have to rely on other countries for navigation. Super important for their military, their economy, all sorts of stuff. Then you've got the Gaofen satellites. Those are high-resolution Earth observation satellites. They're using those for environmental monitoring, urban planning, disaster relief, a whole bunch of things.
So basically keeping an eye on things from above.
Exactly. And get this. In 2024, they were recognized for building a low Earth orbit communications satellite constellation. This is the top global engineering achievement, according to, well, the engineers who give out those awards.
I bet. But what does that even mean? Like, what's the point of that kind of constellation?
It's about global internet access, basically. They could drastically improve internet speeds and coverage, especially in remote areas. Think about it. Reliable, high-speed internet, pretty much everywhere.
Yeah.
That's a game changer for, well, everyone.
That's wild. But to do all of this, all these missions, all these programs, you need a way to get stuff into space, right? What about their rockets?
Well, China launches a lot of stuff into orbit, more than pretty much anyone else. That tells you they've got a really strong launch capability. And their rockets. They're always improving. They're developing new Long March rockets, a new generation with non-toxic fuels and modular designs.
So making them more efficient and safer, I guess.
Exactly. But it's not just the government doing all the launching anymore. Private companies are getting in on the action too. And that's where things get really interesting.
Oh, yeah, the commercial space sector in China. That's a whole other story, right?
It is. They're growing super fast. And a lot of companies are working on reusable rocket technology. Things like the Zhup 3 and Tianlong 3. Those are prototypes that could make space travel way cheaper in the future, just like we're seeing with SpaceX and others.
So basically catching up with the big players in reusability.
More like overtaking them.
Yeah.
They're moving fast. So yeah, they've done a lot. But what's next for China's space program? Well, their future plans. They're crazy ambitious.
Okay, lay it on me. What's on the horizon?
Their big headline goal. Putting people on the moon by 2030.
Whoa, so soon.
Yeah, it's not that far off. If they succeed, China would be only the second nation to ever land humans on the moon.
That's massive. Are they serious about that timeline?
Dead serious. They're building a brand new rocket for it, the Long March 10. It's designed to carry their next-gen spacecraft and lunar landers. A dedicated moon rocket. That says a lot.
It does. But landing people on the moon, that's not exactly a walk in the park.
It's one of the most challenging things humans have ever attempted. And the biggest hurdle for them will be proving those new vehicles are safe and reliable. The tech, the life support systems, everything has to work perfectly.
Yeah, when you're talking about putting people on the moon, there's no room for error.
Absolutely not. But looking at their track record, they set ambitious goals and they hit them. So I wouldn't bet against them.
They've definitely proven they can deliver. Okay, so the moon is one thing, but they've got their sights set on Mars samples too, right?
Oh yeah, Mars samples are a big priority. Their Tianwen 3 mission is all about that. They're aiming to launch in late 2028 and get those samples back to Earth by 2031.
And that's even faster than NASA's current timeline, isn't it? I think I read that somewhere.
It is. They might actually beat NASA to the punch. If they pull it off, it'd be a huge win for their program.
It would show they're not messing around. So how are they planning on grabbing those samples?
They're calling it a grab-and-go strategy. They'll use a drill on the lander to grab samples from under the surface, and they're also thinking about using a small helicopter to collect more diverse samples.
A Mars helicopter. So like a bigger, better version of Ingenuity, the one NASA's already got up there.
Yep, exactly. It's an ambitious plan, but potentially way faster than other methods. They're really pushing the boundaries here.
So beyond the moon and Mars, what else is in store? Where else are they looking?
Their deep space roadmap is pretty extensive. Tianwen-4 is on the books. That one's headed for Jupiter. They'll fly by Uranus, do some detailed studies of Callisto, which is a moon of Jupiter, and a whole bunch of other science stuff. And they're targeting a 2029 launch for that one.
Whoa, 2029, that's so close. So Jupiter, Uranus, what else?
They're also looking at Venus. They're planning missions to collect samples from Venus's atmosphere, which, by the way, is super harsh and hard to study.
Yeah.
But they're going for it. It just goes to show they're in it for the long haul. They're not just hopping around the solar system. They're trying to understand it.
It's like they're taking on every challenge out there.
They are. But, let's not forget about their plans for a more permanent presence on the moon. We touched on it before, the International Lunar Research Station, or ILRS.
Yeah, that's their big collaboration with Russia, right? A
Yeah.
lunar base.
Yep, that's the one. They're planning to build it near the moon's south pole. They're hoping to start construction in the 2030s and have a fully operational crewed lunar base by 2036.
2036, that's just around the corner, cosmically speaking.
It is. And this base is more than just a place to hang out. They want to use it for research, maybe even start using lunar resources, and potentially even live there permanently one day. It's a huge CET project, and it's getting a lot of international attention. Countries are lining up to be a part of it.
That's crazy, but it makes sense. If anyone's going to build a moon base, it's going to be a team effort.
Totally. And with China leading the charge, it's definitely changing the game for lunar exploration.
Yeah.
But we can't forget about the private companies. They're making some big moves too.
Oh yeah, the commercial space sector, what are they cooking up?
Their goals are massive. Take the Tiangong project, for example. They want to launch a network of 14,000 satellites into low Earth orbit.
14,000, that's insane.
Yeah, it's a lot. That's their goal, to have that network up and running by 2030. And it's kind of similar to what SpaceX is doing with Starlink.
So global internet, but on a scale we've never seen before.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it raises some big questions, right? Like, what does that mean for global internet access? What about surveillance? And the big one, space debris.
Yeah, more satellites mean more junk floating around up there.
Exactly. But China is aware of that, and they are working on ways to track and even deorbit old satellites. But still, 14,000 satellites, it's a lot to think about.
It is. Okay, so we've talked about all the cool stuff China's doing in space.
Yeah.
But how do they stack up against the other big players? Like, where do they fit in the global space landscape?
It's a good question.
Yeah.
You can't talk about space exploration without mentioning the U.S., right?
Mhm.
They've been at it longer. They've landed people on the moon. They've got the whole Artemis program going on.
Yeah, NASA's still a big deal.
Oh, absolutely. But China has some big wins of their own, that far-side moon landing. No one else has done that. And as the International Space Station gets closer to retirement, China's Tiangong could be the only space station up there. That gives them a huge advantage for research.
It's like they're setting themselves up to be the space power eventually.
They're definitely on that path, and they launch a lot of stuff into space, sometimes even more than the U.S. So in terms of sheer presence in orbit, they're already a major player.
It's crazy how quickly they've caught up.
It is. And a big part of that is, well, money. Space exploration is expensive, and China is investing a lot.
Okay, so how do their budgets compare?
NASA's budget in 2023 was around $100 billion, which is a lot more than China's official $19.5 billion. But China's investment is growing rapidly. And because their space program is closely tied to the military, some experts think their actual spending is way higher.
The hidden budget trick, classic. But compared to Europe or Russia, China's spending a lot more, right?
They are, no question, and it shows. They're making big strides technologically.
Yeah, we've talked about all the cool stuff they're doing, but what are some of the key technologies that are driving their success? Like, what are they really good at?
Well, that far-side moon landing, that was a huge technical achievement. It showed they've mastered deep space communication and autonomous navigation. That's not easy. And then there's BeiDou, their navigation system. Building that from scratch, that's a testament to their innovation.
So they're not just copying what others are doing, they're coming up with their own solutions.
Exactly. And then there's their commercial space sector. The way they're developing reusable rockets. That's cutting-edge stuff. They could be a major disruptor in the space launch market.
They're coming for SpaceX, basically.
They are. And that competition is only going to push everyone to innovate faster, which is good for everyone in the long run. But let's dive a little deeper into the tech, shall we?
Tech, deep dive. I'm in.
So, launch vehicles. We talk about reusable rockets, right? Companies like Landspace and Space Pioneer, they're at the forefront of that. They're testing rockets like the Zhurong 3, which is made of stainless steel, and the Tiangong 3, which is supposed to be as powerful as a Falcon 9.
So, aiming for full reusability.
Yep. Landspace has already done successful vertical takeoff and landing tests with the Zhurong 3. That's a big milestone. And they're working on new, more efficient rocket engines, too. The YF-100 is one, and they're also working on the YF-130, which is even more powerful. And of course, they're always improving the Long March rockets.
They're workhorse rockets.
Exactly. They're making them non-toxic and more modular, which means more efficient and safer launches.
So rockets are one thing, but what about their satellites? What's new and exciting there?
Well, their Galfin satellites, the ones that observe Earth, they're getting smarter. They're integrating artificial intelligence for real-time data analysis. So instead of sending all that data back to Earth for processing, they can do it right there in orbit. That's a big deal.
Edge computing, but in space, that's pretty cool.
It is. And then they're developing communication satellites with super high throughput. They're using their Dongfeng platforms for that, which are their most advanced satellite buses. That means they can move tons of data back and forth.
Like, how much data are we talking about here?
Think high-definition video streaming from space, globally. That kind of throughput. It's a game changer for communications.
Okay, I'm starting to see the pattern here. Everything they do, it's big, it's ambitious, it's pushing boundaries.
That's China's space program in a nutshell. And then, of course, you've got BeiDou, their navigation system. They're constantly improving it. The next generation will be even more precise and reliable.
So they're really going all in on making that a world-class navigation system.
Yep. But they're also thinking about the future and the problems we're creating in space, like space debris.
Yeah, all that junk floating around up there.
It's a growing problem. And China's taking it seriously. They're developing sensors to track debris and even sails that can be deployed to help deorbit dead satellites.
So trying to be responsible about all the stuff they're putting into space.
Yeah, which is important. Everyone needs to be thinking about that.
Okay, so we've talked about rockets, we've talked about satellites. What about spacecraft, like the actual vehicles they send out there?
Well, their spacecraft are built to last, and they're super adaptable. They're using a modular design approach so they can be reconfigured for different missions. The Shenzhou spacecraft, which carries astronauts, and the Tianzhu cargo vehicles, they're both designed this way.
So kind of like Lego spaceships.
Pretty much. And their lunar landers, the ones they use for the change missions, those are packed with sophisticated tech because landing on the moon is hard. But they're also thinking about the future and reusability.
Like the rockets.
Exactly. They want to build reusable spacecraft for Mars and even asteroid missions.
It's reusable everything.
That's the goal. It makes everything cheaper and more sustainable in the long run. But, there's one piece of tech they're working on that's just wild.
Okay, what is it? You got me intrigued.
Their Chang'e 7 mission, which is going to the moon's south pole, is going to carry this crazy robot. It's a six-legged flying robot.
What?
A six-legged flying robot.
I need to see a picture of this thing.
I know, right? It's designed to explore really tough terrain, like the craters at the South Pole that are always in shadow. It can walk, hop, crawl, and even use little rocket thrusters to fly short distances.
That's straight out of science fiction.
It is. It'll be able to access areas that are impossible for rovers to reach.
So they're not just building a moon base, they're building a whole fleet of crazy robots to explore it.
Exactly. They're going all out.
That's awesome. Okay, so we've talked about their tech, their ambitions, but space exploration is becoming more and more international, right? What are some of China's collaborations with other countries?
They're working with a lot of countries. The International Lunar Research Station, the one they're building with Russia, is a big one. But other countries are involved too. South Africa, Venezuela, Azerbaijan, Pakistan, Belarus. They've all shown interest.
So it's a truly international effort.
It is. And they're also working with the BRICS nations and other developing countries, sharing satellite data and working on joint projects. They've got partnerships with France, Austria, the European Space Agency, Argentina.
So working with everyone.
Pretty much. They're really trying to become a leader in the global space community.
Okay, but it's not all sunshine and roses, right? There's competition too.
Yeah, definitely. especially with the U.S.
The classic space race rivalry.
You got it. The U.S. is concerned about China's rapid progress and the fact that their civilian and military space programs are so closely linked. There's this idea that the tech they develop for space could be used for military purposes too.
Ah, the dual-use problem.
Exactly. And that's led to things like the Wolf Amendment in the U.S., which basically restricts NASA from working with China.
So it's making collaboration harder.
Yeah. And then you've got the ILRS, which is seen as a rival to the U.S.-led Artemis program.
So two different approaches to lunar exploration, which could lead to tension.
Potentially. And the U.S. Space Force is keeping a close eye on China's activities in space. They're a little concerned about some of their satellite maneuvers, which they see as potential counter-space capabilities.
So like weapons in space.
Potentially.
Yeah.
It's a sensitive topic.
Yeah.
And there was also that whole thing with the Chinese observatory in Chile.
Oh, yeah. What was that about?
The U.S. was reportedly concerned about its strategic implications, and it ended up being reviewed. So yeah, there's definitely an element of geopolitical tension surrounding China's space program.
It's like the space race, but way more complex.
Exactly. It's not just about who gets to the moon first anymore. It's about technology, resources, global influence. It's a whole new game.
Okay, so we've talked about a lot, but let's circle back to Tiangong for a minute. That space station isn't just a symbol, it's a place where they're doing serious science.
Right. It's a working lab, and they're tackling some big research questions.
Like what kind of questions?
Well, they're looking at the effects of space on living things, both humans and other organisms. They're studying physics and microgravity, which is something you can't really do on Earth. And they're also doing observations of Earth and the cosmos from their unique vantage point in orbit.
So space-based earth science and astronomy.
Exactly. And new space technologies and applications. There are over 30 different research areas they're tackling up there. It's pretty impressive.
And they've already made some cool discoveries, right?
Oh, yeah. We talked about the space rice and the long-duration water ecosystem, but there's more. They've done some groundbreaking work on mammalian reproduction in space, which is essential if we ever want to, have space babies.
Space babies.
And closed-loop life support systems. They've managed to differentiate human embryonic stem cells into blood stem cells in space, which is a huge step forward for regenerative medicine. And they've developed a super-sensitive cold atom interference gyroscope that works in microgravity.
Okay, I'm lost on that last one.
It's basically a really precise navigation tool. But the point is, they're doing some cutting-edge research on Tiangong. They've already published over 500 scientific papers and filed over 150 patents based on the work done there.
So Tiangong is a real hub for space science. But is it just for Chinese scientists, or can others participate?
It's open to international collaboration. In fact, international teams have already been involved in research on Tiangong, and they've accepted proposals for scientific projects from 17 different countries.
So a truly global space station.
Exactly. It shows that China is serious about collaborating with the rest of the world on space science.
Okay, so as we wrap up this deep dive, let's talk about the bigger picture. What are some of the key takeaways from experts who are watching China's space program closely?
Well, there's a general consensus that China is quickly becoming a dominant force in space. They're the second largest space power in the world, and their ambition is clear. They want to challenge U.S. leadership in space.
That's a bold goal.
It is, but they've got the resources and the drive to make it happen. And some experts believe that involving civilian astronauts and private companies in their space program could help improve their global image.
So trying to show the world that they're not just a military power in space.
Right. But other experts caution that we shouldn't underestimate the U.S. They're still the leader in many areas, especially in the commercial space sector.
SpaceX and all the other companies are still pushing the boundaries.
Absolutely. And the U.S. Space Force is watching China's every move in space, carefully monitoring their activities, especially anything that could be seen as a potential threat.
Like those satellite maneuvers we talked about.
Exactly. And then there's the whole geopolitical angle.
Yeah.
China's space program is seen by some as a way for them to project power and influence around the world. And that can lead to tension and mistrust.
Like with the observatory in Chile.
Yeah. But overall, most experts agree that China's space program is a force to be reckoned with. They're making rapid progress, they're innovating, and they're not slowing down.
So buckle up, because things are about to get interesting.
It's an exciting time to be following space exploration, that's for sure.
It really is. Okay, so after this incredible deep dive into China's space program, it's clear that they're doing some amazing things, often without a lot of fanfare. From their robotic missions on the moon to their independent space station and those bold future plans, they're making a huge impact on the global space landscape.
And they're doing it fast. The speed of their progress is just mind-blowing. They've got this combination of technological innovation, strong government backing, and a long-term vision. And it's really paying off.
They're playing the long game, and that's something we haven't really seen before, not on this scale.
It's a new era in space exploration, that's for sure.
So for you, the learner, as you process all this, as you think about China's incredible achievements, like landing on the far side of the moon, what does all of this mean for the future of space exploration? What about the competition for resources in space? Is it going to be a free-for-all, or will we find a way to work together?
Will there even be enough space for everyone?
These are the big questions we need to be asking ourselves right now, because the future of space is being written right now, and China is holding the pen.
It's definitely something to think about.
It is. And that's it for this episode of, well, this deep dive. We'll be back soon with more explorations of the most interesting stuff happening in the world.
Until next time.